Well, hello, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I'll be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night we talked about fairy tales, the stories that I've heard not just over the years, but over the last more than 40 years, more than 4 decades, from any number of different people, up to and including CIA agents who confused me as being one of their own, and were quite shocked to discover I was not one of their own. I was actually at a meeting once where I was trying to find investors for a business plan I had called IVBC, Internet Video Broadcasting Company, IVBC.com. And my concept was to create a cyber television network, the fifth at that time television network. This goes back a few years. I had devised the concept of a video application, video software delivery system, VSDS, which eventually one of the 60-plus marketing people I worked with decided to call Codec Blue. Anyway, it could broadcast down to a 56K modem, an old modem, a full color picture, full screen, stereo sound, the whole bit. And it looked just like regular television, but it could be seen anywhere in the world if you had at least a 56K modem. It could actually give you a small clear picture on a 33.3 modem. And even today, 10, 15 years later, no company in the world has developed anything like it, and I still have the formula, if you will. But anyway, had been contacted by this guy who said he had a trust fund that he was investing for out of Illinois or somewhere in the Midwest. And I went and met them, and I showed them my business plan, and I met who turned out to be all CIA agents, either current or former. And they were, not surprisingly, working with this guy who had this $650 million trust fund that he was investing in. And the guys thought, as you know, CIA agents often do, they think they're very clever, and they started talking what they thought was riddles in front of me. And it turned out, I realized what they were talking about instantly, and it turned out they were talking about, again, another fairy tale about Planet X, which is actually a dead brown dwarf star, passing back into the plane of our solar system. But Planet X is a dead brown dwarf star. It's not a planet. It actually does have 3 planets orbiting it. And we apparently, according to the fairy tale, our government, all the governments of the Earth, well, the Western ones at least, have been doing business with the civilization called Nibiru on one of the 3 planets that orbits the dead brown dwarf star. And they thought they were being very clever, and well, CIA agents tend to be arrogant and stupid. I know this from way too much personal experience. So they thought they were being clever. And I started talking, which scared them to death. And I had to convince them that I actually wasn't a CIA agent. And if I was, could you call the office and tell them to send me all my back pay? I could use the money. So anyway, I've been hearing these fairy tales over and over and over again, sometimes in other languages, which I then have to translate and try to figure out, what the heck is being said to me. And there's an old Bruce Willis movie called The Fifth Element, where he says, and I quote, I only speak 2 languages, English and bad English. And that pretty much sums me up. I'm a good American. I have no facility with languages at all, not even Spanish. And I mostly spent my life in New York and Los Angeles, where mostly people just speak Spanish. But these are fairy tales. These are things that I have not seen with my own eyes. And these are things I cannot point to you and say, go look there for proof, because they're fairy tales. But I keep hearing them, year after year, decade after decade. So tonight, I thought we might chat about free will versus the hand of God. And this sort of comes under the fairy tale genre, I suppose, because I was thinking to myself quite casually, there's a place, well, there's a company called TSA. TSA basically molests little children, infants, grown-ups, adults, soldiers, military personnel, just because in the United States you decide to get on an airplane. There's a non-governmental agency hired by the United States of America Incorporated, because the United States is no longer a constitutional republic. It is now a corporation. You are an asset of that corporation. You are a resource. You are a human resource, but you're just an asset, you're property. So you'll do what you're told because the corporation owns you. I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be cool if God, whoever or wherever she happens to be, just reached out her hand and caused all of the TSA agents in the United States who are finger-raping little children, even as we speak, caused all these psychopaths and lunatics and morons and gibbering idiots simply to vanish. Every TSA employee, including the owners, who of course are making a fortune, simply vanish because God reached out her hand and simply made them go away. And I thought about that. But then it gets us back to where it always does, to free will. Your choice, your decision. Let's say God, if she exists, reaches out her hand and every TSA moron, gibbering idiot, psychotic, simply vanished off the face of the earth. You're saved. Your children are no longer being finger raped by psychopaths. Your infants are no longer being fingered in their cradles simply because you took them on an airplane. What would you learn? Would you learn to stand up for yourself, for your rights? Would you stand up against evil? Would you make the conscious decision, I'm choosing God over the devil, good over evil? Wouldn't you want, if you make the effort to actually be here, wouldn't you actually want to learn something? And wouldn't standing up for yourself as a man, as a woman, as a human being, wouldn't it be better, instead of waiting for God and her hand to reach out and save you from evil, wouldn't you, as a child of God, wouldn't you rather learn that lesson for yourself? I mean, anyone who's had children, or I never have, but I've been around a lot of little children. And right now, there's two little girls living downstairs who are a lot of fun. One of them's 12, and the other one's, I guess, 5, I guess. And I watch them interact with their mother. And being a mother, she wants to do things for them. And the little 5-year-old says, no, Mom, I want to do it myself. I want to learn how to do this myself. So if God is our mother, and we're her children, are we going to expect God to save us every time we get in trouble? Or, if God is our mother, wouldn't she want us to learn these things for ourselves? I mean, because if God, your mother, saved you every single time, how would you learn to feed yourself? How would you learn to house yourself? How would you learn to protect yourself against evil? What would you learn if your mom did everything for you? It's funny, it gets me back to the CIA and the psychopaths they like to hire. I was thinking about this also. I yet again ran into another. He claims he was a CIA agent. In fact, he was actually just an asset of the CIA and is just being used by them to help destroy democracy in Italy. And the interesting thing about all of the assets the CIA likes to collect is they all have the mentality of very small children. They all believe themselves to be great heroes and great defenders of the United States, but the reality is they're just little children, 5 years old. And in this one fellow's particular case, he's 50 years old. And yet his mentality is that of a 5-year-old because his mama spoiled him rotten. His female relatives spoiled him rotten. And then he married a woman, and forgive me, she's very ugly. And you just ask him, he'll tell you how beautiful he is, how physically beautiful he is. And yet he married a really ugly woman, who he refers to nowadays as the dumb redneck. But he married this really ugly woman because he needed a second mommy. And he considers himself to be a great hero of the American people. He is a hero to his children. But he's 5 years old. And the CIA thrives on people who are arrogant and stupid and 5 years old, but all grown up, spoiled rotten, because they believe themselves to be important. And they believe that you and I are not. That's the heart and soul of the CIA and their war against man. They are important. You and I are not. So my thing about God reaching down and saving us from evil at the very last moment, I've actually heard numerous times people say to me, well, I'm not worried about it. The world will end. Well, it won't. It'll just change. But at the last moment, God will reach down her hand and take me up to heaven because I'm good, I'm righteous, I'm pious, and all these other things. God will save us. And then I think, well, if God saves us, how would we learn anything? And whenever I hear somebody say God will save us, and take us up to heaven because we're good and we're pious and we're righteous, the people I know who say that, 6 days a week, they turn their backs on the weak, the helpless, the hopeless, the defenseless. They rob, they cheat, they steal, they rape. And yet on the seventh day, when they go to church or to temple or to mosque, all of a sudden they're pious and righteous and religious and God's chosen. Because one day out of 7, they give a few shekels to the poor. One day a week, they give some alms to the starving. One day a week, they give a few bucks to the homeless. And they actually believe when they do that, that they're God. At the final moment of whatever judgment you want to call it, will reach out her hand and save them and take them physically to heaven. But the other 6 days, they lie, they rape, they steal, they cheat. And they turn their backs on the world, even as being destroyed around them. Why? Because they're important. You and I are not. They are important because I don't know why, honestly. They're important, so the rest of us have to suffer for them. So I don't really think God, in her infinite wisdom, is going to reach her hand down at the very last moment and pluck us physically up into paradise as our brothers and sisters are destroyed, wiped out. I just don't see that happening. Free will is something, from my point of view, that I've seen with my own eyes. Free will is what God and her lover, Satan, I see these as 2 girlfriends having a tiff. One has chosen good, one has chosen evil, and we're the children in between. The one thing that I've seen with my own eyes that I can talk about, because I've seen it over and over and over again, is that free will controls everything that we do. Both the God and the devil, if they exist, have decided, have agreed that you and I have a choice. Good or evil, right or wrong, God or the devil. I've actually met Satan worshipers. And I could talk about this because it actually happened to me more than once. I've actually met Satan worshipers who actually believe that the devil is the one true God. They're looking forward to committing atrocities in her name. They're looking forward to dying, leaving their bodies behind, going to hell, and serving their master, their God, Satan, the devil, in hell. And the look of rapture on their faces when they talk about this. This is no joke. This is where the problem we have, of course, as just normal folk, is that devil worshippers, Satan worshippers, believe that Satan is God and that evil is good. Raping and murdering children, that's okay, because we're doing it in God's name. We're doing God's work for her. Little King George V, little George Bush, often would say things like, war is peace. How on earth could war be peace? That's like saying right is wrong, up is down, left is right. War is peace? That's a satanic statement right there, out in the open. And the thing about the CIA and the NSA and our masters is they say everything out in the open. And then you and I have to make some sense out of it. They always tell us what they're going to do, always. We just have to figure it out. But who would have the time to figure all this gibberish out, unless you're only 5 years old and you're playing childish, silly games? When you're a little child, you don't really comprehend how you can hurt people. And if you do comprehend how you can hurt people, you really don't care. So, free will versus the hand of God. You know, we've chatted before about, are we inside of a computer program? Are you and I actually students at university, and we're 19 years old, and our parents have paid a lot of money to give us the best education we can get? And to do that, we go to university, and every day at 9 a.m. we go to class, we lay down on a couch, we plug our minds, our physical brains, into a computer. We then become part of the computer, part of the program. Our physical bodies help power the machine, just like in the movie The Matrix. Humans are part of the machine, part of the program. They create the program. In this particular instance, if you and I are plugged into a computer right now, and this is all a computer simulation that we're living, it feels pretty real to me, I think our parents would be really pissed if after a couple of hours in this machine where we've lived an entire lifetime and we signed up to, say, get a degree in North American studies. We learn the English language, we learn Spanish, we learn French, whatever. We learn the culture, and we spend, we think, 50, 60, 70, 100 years living this one life. But in this instance, if God, the computer, comes and saves us every time we get into trouble, what did we learn? Did our parents get their money's worth because the computer, God, kept saving us? We never had to learn how to speak or read the language because God would read us the book. We never learned how to defend ourselves because God would appear and, save us from our enemies. We never learned how to build a house so we could, live safely, because when we were cold or hungry and it rained, God showed up and built us a house. That's a huge waste of money for our parents. Boy, will they be pissed when we unplug from this machine and go and meet them for lunch and say, "Hi, Dad. Hi, Mom. Here's my 4-year degree. What did I learn?" "Well, I didn't learn how to read or write." "What?" "I didn't learn the difference between good and evil because God kept showing up and saving me." "What?" I think our parents at that point would be really pissed because we were never given the option of free will. We never had the option of learning for ourselves. Because God kept saving us. The hand of God, she reached down and saved us, just like your mom does when you're 3 years old. That's what moms are for. But not when you're 50. And at some point, mom has to let you go and learn on your own. So whether we're inside of a computer program or whether this is the universe and you and I just existing, we create the universe, which creates God, and God comes down and says, "Hi, how are you?" But as we've talked about before, God's a little bigger than we are, so we can't really talk to her directly. So there are intermediaries, our older brothers and sisters who've left the cradle of the human race, the earth, and gone out into the stars. It's pretty simple. You and I could do it. Just take some cash, really, and some knowledge, which is freely available on the internet. The universe is electrical. Traveling through the universe is pretty easy. But we can't do that if God saves us every time we get in trouble. We can't do anything if we can't learn on our own because God, our mother, keeps saving us. So I don't think at the last minute when the dead brown dwarf star passes between the Earth and the Sun and flips us end for end as it does every 32,000 years, I don't think God is going to show up and start plucking us up into heaven. I don't think so. Because I'm guessing God's a pretty good mom. And she and her girlfriend, her lover, the devil, have decided that at least the children have to be able to have free will to choose between us. So no, I don't think that we can leave this up to God. And I know we can't leave it up to the devil. There's an ancient prayer, an ancient blessing, an ancient greeting, an ancient farewell we use for close friend and beloved strangers. May you live as long as you wish, and may you love as long as you live. For the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel finding his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race, their black magic, captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.